evening. Should we try again?
Of course,
Good evening.
My throat is killing.
Good evening and welcome to the next exciting instalment in our franchise wars. This week we are looking at the following. I like those glasses. I need my flip phone. We are doing the Matrix trilogy. So we have the Matrix, we have the Matrix Reloaded, and then we have that pile of shit. So, right. I like those glasses, Mark.
My Elvis glasses. Fantastic.
So, I remember when the Matrix came out, and it was brilliant. It looked
a breath of fresh air.
It looked ace. It sounded ace.
Yeah.
It looked ace. It sounded ace. And it was one of those where it had got fighting in it, and I was marginally interested. I was like, all right, I can cope with this because I'm not into kung fu and all that stuff. It was a really great film. It was a great film. It was brilliant.
Mate, I loved it. Sci-fi, comic book, kung fu, everything you're going to love there. Then you actually sit down and watch past the film on the surface, and Jesus Christ, are you dreaming this? Is this your reality? What's going on? Holy shit, hold on a moment, let's talk about this. And you could go back and watch it again and again and enjoy it on just so many levels. Enjoy it as a kung fu film, enjoy it as a sci-fi film, enjoy it as a comic book film, really. The Wachowskis had written like numerous comic books beforehand, and it really, it makes sense when you go and look at them all now, just how comic book it was. But it was so much more than any of that. It was so much better than it had any right to be. And the fact that they did it on a more restricted budget, fantastic. It just meant everyone practiced so hard for it. Everyone just made every penny count, and it was fucking brilliant.
It wasn't an original story though, and that's a lot of people think it was. It was ripped off from a Twilight Zone episode where there's a woman who's having dreams and she wakes up and she's in a tank and there's loads of other bodies. And the Twilight Zone story makers and producers did try and sue them, and they got a nice little handout to go away. But it's not an original story. A lot of people think it is, and it's not. It's been ripped off from somewhere else.
Still a great film.
They still wrote it all. They wrote the characters. They wrote the story there. They took the idea from somebody else. They didn't take the story from somebody else. They took the idea.
Still a great film. I mean, all the casting, all the casting, all the characters are absolutely on point. Absolutely on point. Even Damien out of Home and Away, who makes a fleeting appearance as that annoying kid.
Mouse.
The chap out of Gentle Ben. It's just great.
The girl out of Home and Away as well, who had the rabbit on her shoulder, the white rabbit one.
Yeah. No, it's. I can't find many faults with it. Last time out, I talked about my faults with Superman 2 and particular bad guys wear me up with Terrence Stamp. Hugo Weaving is marvellous in this. This is, for me, his best film. I just think it's fantastic.
And what it also showed us is that Keanu Reeves broke away from his Bill and Ted persona. And that was quite a surprise for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, he'd done action with Speed as well, like before.
Yeah, and Point Break.
If you watch Speed and watch Point Break, he's still a little bit Bill and Ted in both of them films.
Keanu Reeves is an underrated actor. He's not the best actor in the world. He's not made to fit every type of role. He certainly can't stretch himself to a lot of things, but he can do comedy, he can do action. But what he shows really well, he's kind of a modern day Steve McQueen, really. He likes the quiet acting. If you can do acting through a few looks and a couple of, whoa, then he's just brilliant at that stuff. And physically, it's tough to find anybody. I mean, really, as he's shown with John Wick, the guy's just a real physical monster. I mean, just physical acting is his forte. The guy's fantastic. In 47 Ronin, everything that he does, really, he just puts himself to it so completely. It's wonderful.
Another thing I've found with the film, when we go back and look at some of this stuff, 21 years old now, but it's not dating at all.
Nope.
You don't look at this movie and think this is a 20+ year movie.
Nope.
It's
I think it's spot on. I think you're right, Mark. Honestly,
and I've got to say, when you look at Matrix compared to Reloaded, let's not talk about story elements, but from a visual perspective, the special effects in the first movie are far superior to the second one. It goes
because they
so cartoony in the second one.
CGI.
Yeah,
They rehearsed. They brought in the wire work guys. They had the 360 cameras, things that they were inventing really at the time. And they concentrated on how much physical work they could do. And they kept the CGI to a minimum. And when they did put it in, because it was a minimum, it worked really well. Yeah. And everything just worked amazingly. Then as soon as they got the big budget, you know, there were things that were great. You know, I did enjoy the car chases and stuff later. But really, CGI and a big budget was the death of those films as like a top-notch, top-tier franchise.
I'll tell you what the death of the films is this movie. They keep saying, oh, it was always going to be a trilogy. It clearly fucking was not. They made this movie. They did it. It was a good, complete story. They could have left it where it was. It was popular. They got money. They sat down and I thought, what the fuck are we going to do now? And they made it seem like they'd got 2 and 3 planned in advance, and they clearly hadn't. And they just did not know where to go or what to do with it next, because the Matrix is exposed, Neo is exposed, he knows who he is. They could have done so much more than we got Reloaded.
Yeah, it's much like the Terminator franchise. They kind of picked the wrong path to go down with what you could do with the characters.
You know what? I think there's a few things that grate on me where it starts to lose its way. So
the first one or second or third?
The second. I love the first one. I think they should have stopped there. I just love the first one. If you look at the second one is they're almost trying to. The first half an hour, 45 minutes is trying to trying to play catch up and say, oh, play catch up with the first film. Oh, look, he's doing his Superman thing again, right? The Zion scene is one of the most boring 20 minutes of life you'll never get back. So if you know the bit where they're dancing, going, let's dance to Zion and have a party, like, is this ever going to end? So that winds me up. Agent Smith is drastically overused. He was such an iconic villain in the first film that they were like, oh, what can we do? Oh, let's just have loads of him. Wouldn't it be brilliant? And then I think they lost their way doing that, because he becomes a computer virus that's trying to take over the real world and the Matrix. And it just loses it. It loses it so badly. And you talk about the iconic fight scene. I remember there's a few fight scenes in the second one. There's the chateau with the Merovingian, that French guy who I can't stand.
The sword fighting one.
The sequence is good. I can't stand the French actor.
The stuff in the hallways, okay. I can cope with that. It's the Agent Smith fight.
Yeah, it's terrible. And can you imagine if they filmed that now, how much better that would be? It was too ambitious. It was too ambitious a shot for a film that was done 17 years ago, and they just couldn't do it. But the real thing that winds me up about Reloaded is it goes off on this path towards one of the worst films that's ever been put to print.
I wouldn't say it was one of the worst films. The biggest problem with Reloaded is somebody not having the guts to turn around to the Wachowskis and say, stop, because they didn't know when to stop with this movie, as seen with the Zion scene, as seen with the Agent Smith. They needed somebody to sit them down, a good editor with some bollocks, and say, you need to trim this, you need to cut this, you need to cut this. Because if you cut all the fucking flannel, the over-egged action scenes, that appalling over-egged Zion sequences.
I was going to say, how long is that one when they've got like the exoskeleton machine guns firing at like those sentinels going?
Yeah.
How long? Because
that's the
feels about an hour.
But with this second movie, if they trimmed it down by about 30 minutes and made it a 90-minute movie, there is an half-decent story there, considering the second plan. We got there's far too much emphasis on the twins, which did absolutely
nothing. I agree.
Cut them out.
The twins, you could remove them entirely, and you don't lose anything.
No difference. concentrate on the French guy and Persephone, because obviously they're doing their little storyline undercurrent. Concentrate on the guy with the keys. Concentrate on what's her name? What's
The Oracle.
The Oracle. Concentrate on the Oracle, and then meeting what's his name at the end with the TVs. You can get a decent movie if you bother to sit down and re-edit the fucking thing.
Cut down the architect's speech.
Yeah.
The architect speech is too long. But one thing that cracks me up about this is you start making a franchise which is always a success. The Wachowski brothers made the biggest mistake of trying to be Star Wars, because the first one is A New Hope, the second one they tried to do Empire Strikes Back, and the third one is a beat-for-beat remake of Return of the Jedi. There's no getting away from it.
With Agent
Smith more later.
Agent Smith as the Ewoks.
If you watch the film, right, and watch it properly, right, it starts where Zio is stuck and trying to get out. Yeah, so there's that plot point, which takes up half an hour of the film. And there's all the bits that's going on around it with all the other characters trying to find him and bring him back. Right, that segment, time beat, like Wizard of Oz and Pink Floyd. If you played Return of the Jedi next to the Revolutions, that's the entire Jabba sequence just there, right? Then, pretty quickly, and it moves along pretty quickly after that, right, is then we've got the Agent and Smith fight, which is the same as the Vader and Luke fight. You've got the war with the Sentians and Zion fighting each other, which is exactly the same sequence, beat for beat. It even cuts between the three things going on, the same as Return of the Jedi does, right? So you've got which is basically the fight on Endor with the Ewoks against the Stormtroopers. So that's the exact same fight going on there. They've even got fucking scout walkers, for God's sake, walking around, which is practically the same. And then you've got the other bit where you got Neo then doing the sort of the Emperor thing at the very end. It's a beat for beat thing it's beat for beat all the way through. And every time I watch it, I keep thinking to myself, they watch too much Return of the Jedi. They watch too much Star Wars, full stop. But that's how it feels when you look back. They tried to make Empire Strikes Back, and then they tried to make Return of the Jedi, and they tried to make Return of the Jedi that much. They fucking copied it beat for beat.
There are lots wrong with. Let's just going back to Reloaded. You're right. There's too many flat bits in it where you're going, come on, you know. And I remember sitting in the cinema, watching them go. And watching Neo and Trinity getting off with each other on Zion, going, all right, jog on. 20 minutes later, it was still going on. There was like slow dancing, but there is a semblance of a good film there. The come down from 2 to 3, though, is magnificent. They made a huge thing about Agent Smith is this rogue computer program that all it wants to do is assimilate everything. Okay? So in the second one, Neo nearly gets beaten by 100 Agent Smiths, and he does his Superman bit and flies off. In the third film, in the final fight, it's one Agent Smith who seems to have everybody else's power now, because he has taken over every single being in the Matrix. So there's all Agent Smiths. They stand and watch one Agent Smith. Why didn't they all just gang up on Neo and assimilate him? I have no idea why they did that. It didn't make any sense, because in the second one, they were ganging up on him. They were doing it right. In the third one, they went, "I'll just leave it to one of them." It was silly.
Yeah, but what's gone on there? They've gone from the first film where everyone's pretty human, and then suddenly the extraordinary world that's hidden in plain sight is slowly unveiled to you, or suddenly unveiled. Like, you know, the agents suddenly have, like, you know, their superpowers, like, to extent. And then Neo finds his ability, and he goes from very, very normal, very, very as ordinary as you can sort of be, really, then to suddenly this world expanded, and bang. And that's the real trick of it. But as they went on in 2 and especially 3, the whole thing seemed to be make everyone a superhero. forget the ordinary world sort of side of it. Make everyone a superhero, and suddenly it went to, you know, like a Marvel team up, a massive annual sort of, where everyone's coming in from every comic to all meet in the one. The same as the Flash, the CW universe do nowadays. But it went from being gritty to super normal, paranormal science fiction to just becoming boring.
Yeah.
The problem I've also got with Agent Smith and the virus and everything is I can understand the Sentinels and the robots and everything ruling, but I could not, and I still can't quite work out what Agent Smith's motivation is. What is his aim?
He becomes a rogue program, isn't he?
Why does he hate Neo so much?
Everything.
In the second one, he says, "Oh, and it's because of you that I'm free." And you're like, okay, so why does he then hate Neo so much?
I just don't get why he wants to take over the entire Matrix and turn everybody into himself. No. There's just no understanding at all. That just gone, and we already know that they can just reset the Matrix at any time. So he was actually achieving nothing, because it literally was a case of, if your PC plays up, turn it off and back on again, and that's all Neo is. It's an antivirus.
And then,
what are we going to do with 7?
And then, in the background to that, you've got this ridiculous charade going on with the Merovingian, if I've pronounced it right, saying, "Oh, I've dealt with your predecessors before," and you're like, "Oh, so this has all happened before?" Leading the merry dance to the architect, saying, "Oh, yeah, we know this has happened," and then you see 5 or 6 different Neos, and you're going, "Oh, this really is a bloody mess." It's just like, what's going on?
5 previous, he's the 6th, and then they start talking about the 7th.
And then what happens is everybody who sat there going, "Oh, you know, when Agent Smith stands in awe and watches Neo because he finally gets that he can destroy him," you sit there and go, "I'm bored now. They've ruined it." And by the end of the third one, I was just yawning, going, "When's this going to be over?" It was one of the biggest come downs in a franchise. I mean, you talk about the misstep between Highlander. It's not quite much of a cliff edge,
I'll just say
but it
now,
is pretty high.
Now we've watched the Highlander franchise. Nothing can hurt me anymore, mate. Nothing can cut me. I'm undefeatable. I am invincible at this point. Nothing can hurt me anymore. I've seen the Highlander franchise. I've seen one of the best films followed up by, things that tried to destroy the original movie. These actually that's what I've actually appreciated the Matrix franchise much more than I thought I was going to. Yeah, the first one it's one of my pretty much perfect films, really. I absolutely love it. It's fantastic. It's got everything and a whole lot more that you would ever want, and it's got more than you ever realised you wanted out of it. It's a fantastic movie. It's so well cast, directed, the stunts, the fights, everything, all the effects, everything is wonderful. Then they give them a bigger budget and they bugger it up. And they start casting people who don't seem to give a shit. Suddenly the acting goes downhill as well. That was what I noticed. From the first one, where everyone was pretty, you can have small actors, big parts, all that sort of thing. But no one was bad in the first one. They were all fantastic. Everyone acted to the zenith, to their ultimate. In 2 and 3, the acting skills, the acting quality went rapidly downhill. A lot of hamminess, a lot of, I don't really give a shit about this, that all went away. It killed me. I hated that. It lost so much. But I still watched them and thought, well, they're not the Highlander 2, the Quickening. They're not the Sorcerer, They're not Endgame. They're not Source. They're actually reasonable. Yeah, okay, they're following up one of my great films, one of my favourites of all time, probably one of the greats, and they're following them up with okay sort of films that might be like a fun blockbuster if they weren't following such an absolutely amazing film. And as such, they stand and look weak. But if you watch them on their own, they're at least sort of C-grade films. They don't look as good as the first because too much CGI, but they still don't look terrible.
Yeah.
You know, but they're not worthy of being following the Matrix. That's their main problem.
I think the problem they've got with the sequels is they tie themselves up in knots and they don't really know where they want to go with it. I mean,
They're more clever than they think they are.
Yeah.
They established by the end of the second one that it's all happened before. So we've got centuries potentially of Neo comes along. We've got a Zion. They want to free the humans. The architect gives them the choice. And then after so many decades or centuries, we're back to this situation again where so many humans have decided they want to stay in the system. And as time's gone by, they've forgot about the thing that's happened with the architect. So somebody has to come along called Neo to bring balance to the Force. And and it's a continual cycle. But as soon as you find out that there's that complete cycle there, it takes away the what's going to happen.
Yeah.
Is it going to work? Because we know it is, and so therefore, and especially when you know they've turned the computer and turned it back on again because it's booting up right the fucking end, isn't it? Where the sun coming through and they're saying, "Oh, well, will it all go back to normal?" They've got a choice, and I just sat there and I thought that is going to be the most since the Wizard of Oz when she woke up back on the fucking farm and it's that bad of an ending to a trilogy. It really, really is. It is a 4-year-old story at primary school when they go, and I woke up and it was all a dream.
And it was all better. Yeah.
It is that awful and that sickly sweet.
The classic Dallas. Bobby comes out the shower. It was all a dream.
I'll tell you what, though, right? One thing I've got to say is Warner Brothers keep their special effects when it comes to movies because the Agent Smith and Neo fight, they just superimpose General Zod and Superman on the end of Man of Steel because it's the exact same battle at the end of. I don't know whether you've noticed, but you can actually overlay it over each other. I'm just being a geek now because I hate.
I thought you were.
I think with Revolutions, you just stop caring. That the biggest thing for me is you just go, I don't care anymore. And why is it with franchises that they have these brilliant characters? So Agent Smith, they've overinvested in how great Agent Smith was, and they then underinvest in Neo because he becomes a little bit fallible again. And even up the odds by making that chateau scene with the Merovingian, and all of a sudden they're all amazingly brilliant at doing all the stuff. You think, no, it takes away from what Neo was supposed to be. But
the problem is by the time they've got to the third movie, like I said to you, it is a beat for beat remake of Return of the Jedi, which isn't a bad thing, right? It isn't a bad film. They're not, 3 of them are not bad films, but because of how they convoluted the story so much with Reloaded, by the time you come to watch Revolutions, you don't really care what happens.
Yeah.
And they
I think Revolutions to me exacerbates everything that was bad about Reloaded. There was good stuff about Reloaded as well. Reloaded fun, as a movie to watch it. Like there's some fun stuff, but Revolutions to me, it just made everything that was bad. It took everything that was bad about 2, and it just amped it up. It focused on all of that and just made it worse and worse.
And the problem with Revolutions, it brought nothing to the table story-wise. It just literally did take the bits from Reloaded that need to be resolved, and it gave us nothing new. We knew what was going to happen from the moment we started watching it. Is they're going to get Neo back into the Matrix. We know the Sentinels are going to fight the humans. We know Neo was going to defeat Agent Smith, and then we know that Neo was then going to sort out things so the humans can live. We knew all this stuff before we went and sat down, and we got no surprises. They just gave us what we knew was coming, which was quite irritating.
You're right. And then to try and appease people, let's just stuff it full of action sequences that were too far ahead of their time and the CGI couldn't cope with. And you're right. I think you mentioned the twins, Mark. That I remember that scene. Oh my God, those twins, and they can do all that. They're amazing with knives. utterly irrelevant. Trim them out of the film. I think there is a version on YouTube where they remove them entirely, every mention of them, and you wouldn't even know they were there.
Yeah.
It's just too much going on. Tried too hard to throw too much action in. And without the Matrix, one of the things I hate this franchise about is because it took itself so seriously and was dark and moody and weird. It's a Warner Brothers thing. Nolan said, "Oh, that'll work in Batman." You've got a miserable Batman to thank. It has to thank the Matrix for this.
No, I think who we've got to blame for a miserable Batman is DC Comics, because Batman is notoriously miserable and dark in the comics, and as much as I ain't that keen on the Nolan movies, I know you aren't. It is dark and gritty source material anyway.
Yeah,
just wasn't executed the right way for me.
But if you're a Warner Brothers executive,
you could work with that.
If you're a Warner Brothers executive and you sit down and say we're going to reboot the Batman franchise, oh, what's worked really well lately? Oh, The Matrix was good and dark, and look at that action, and there you go, you got that in Batman Begins. Happy days, it ticks the box, and then he just used the source material.
I think it comes from the people looked at the source material. I think with the Batman stuff, that and the fact that when Burton himself started rebooting it, he went for a darker thing. Yeah, he had some moments of levity, but it wasn't Joel Silver type of levity and all that. But he was a lot darker and more gothic. Nolan came along and went, let's go darker and more realistic instead. Mm. But the Matrix instead is quite bright, and the first one actually has a lot of brightness in it and everything, but then they take the real world and, as you say, make it dark and gritty, and then everything that you get afterwards is dark and gritty and CGI painted and everything like that. All the stuff that I hate.
Yeah, lots of CGI, lots of matte paintings, and an awful lot of green. I think the Wachowskis love the colour green. There's like an ongoing theme is how green everything is.
But the idea of green was based on the original PCs when the Matrix was supposed to have been
green
built,
screen,
like Amstrads and stuff like that. That was the idea behind it.
And the bit as well in Revolutions where you can see everything in gold. I mean,
when he's blind and looking down, and suddenly he sees the real world as he sees the Matrix, so his powers start to transfer over and everything.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
One thing we haven't mentioned here.
What's your trick? It's very Daredevil, though. It is when you look at it now and you look at like all the Daredevil shows and everything. That's sort of how you do it in World on Fire.
Now, when the box set came out to this, I bought the big deluxe box set, which also had the Animatrix stuff in it. Did anybody ever watch any of that stuff?
I watched it back in the day. I haven't watched it for years.
Some of it was actually better than the actual fucking sequels, which was quite scary. There were some really good story ideas.
And the PlayStation game, Enter the Matrix, was incredible, making use of bullet time. Now, that's what you wanted to see. You wanted to see bullet time. I was like, oh, that was awesome. The game was fantastic.
I'll tell you what I thought would have worked well. If it was done today, if they'd only done the first Matrix movie, if that was all that they'd done, and it's today, wouldn't it be a fantastic streaming show? They could actually have made that story, stretched it out, made it longer and everything. You could get away with a lot more of that in a show where you could do episodes like it and just go. And you just have enough to make it just look amazing, but you'd have a story stretched over the whole thing. You'd properly arc it, and you could have a really amazing show out off the back of that then.
And you might care about Zion. You might care about the humans. Because
because they'd have given more time to the story and more development of characters and things like that.
Because quite frankly, I've got to be honest, when I saw them celebrating on Zion, I'd have took the frigging blue pill. I wouldn't have gone anywhere near that red pill or whatever the way around it was. There's no way. I'd have gone, nah, thanks, I'll stay in that thing. That's far better than that crap life. Going around sweating with a thing in the back of your head. And all you got to look forward to is Lawrence Fishburne moaning at you all that time. Nah, sod that. Stick me eating fake stuff, far better. The guy from Gentle Ben had a very good point in the first film. Right, we need to rate these bad boys. Let's get them rated. I'm going to kick things off, as I very often do with these. I'm going to go I'm going to go. The best one for me is The Matrix, the original, and by far the best one. In second place, because I think we've agreed, trim some of the fat off, take the twins out, and shoot them painlessly in the back of the head, and you've got a semblance of a good film. So that's number 2 for me. And unfortunately, it's a bigger come down than quite a lot of things. Matrix Revolutions is number 3 for me. Matrix Revolutions is a bad film, and it's boring.
It's not a bad film. It's just disappointing compared to the first film, which everything is held up to. It's not Superman 4. It's not Highlander. Even Highlander the Quickening is not terrible as hell. Well, it is that is terrible on its own anyway. But yeah, it's not Highlander the Quickening. It's not any of those. It's not Superman 4, which is just a terrible film.
Just for consistency, Matrix Revolutions is better than Star Wars Episode 3: Revenge of the Sith. Sorry, Martin, go on.
No, if I was doing it, it's 1, 2. It is the order that they come out in. It's 1, 2, 3, and it's probably. I'm going. The first one for me is an A+ movie. I do love it. It's fantastic. If I was grading the second one, then it's probably a C+. There was lots of fun in it. There were good things in it, but could try harder, definitely. And it really needs to get better at some of that other work. And then for the last one, Revolutions. Christ, would you go? Is it a D+ or a C- sort of thing? It's not awful. It's not great. It's just there. Does it deserve to be on the same list as like the first Matrix, which, as I say, it's an A+ movie for me? No, it really doesn't. But it's not watching them back now, it's not been the worst time that I've had watching these. I mean, as I say, we watched the Highlander franchise. Nothing can hurt me now. I'm immune to shit now. That's we watch all the Rambo franchises. Jesus Christ, there's degrees of the Terminator franchise. There were hurtful moments in that, but as we said with that, it was all the movies aren't actually awful. Even the bad ones aren't awful. They're just not as good as the first two. And this is The Matrix. You've got a brilliant first movie. You've got a sort of okay second movie. And you've got a third movie that, in comparison to it, is awful. But in reality, it's kind of, oh, well, that's a couple of hours taken. I switched off my brain part the way through because it's disappearing up its own arsehole with its self-importance.
Mark, you've got 5 minutes.
One.
Hold on,
Don't you dare. If you dare do what I think you're going to do, I'm going to stop this now. If he does not go 1, 2, 3,
It's
with
Oh. Hello, Mr. Anderson. Oh, I'm looking forward to this.
I got to wait for him to come back.
Oh, no, I think you can start without. He'll be able to hear you.
Well, one.
Oh, Dave's crying in the dark. He's crying in the dark. Is he having a crying wank?
See, now, what I'm about to say.
So that was Franchise Wars. Thanks very much, everybody, for listening. It's 1, 2, 3.
No. Give him his day.
What I'm about to say is Martin hit the nail on the head, and that's why 3 beats out 2, because you've got such a fantastic first movie. Then you've got a massive come down of 2. Right? No, I'm not saying that 3 is far superior to 2, but as a movie as a whole, it is a better watch than 2 is. There is so much shit in 2 that if they cut the shit out, there's a better story. But the problem and the reason why you both hate on 3 so much is because 2 was so shit and 3 had to just tie up the loose end. No. It's a loose end tie-up movie.
No. I hate on 3 so much because nothing's happened. It's a convoluted mess. It's crap, Mark.
It's not bad.
It's not bad. it's not great. It's not bad. It just I'll disagree with you. The worst thing about 3 is it takes on all the bad parts of 2 and amps them up, and it tries to be so self-important and clever. It tries and it tries and tries. And while it's doing all that, it also tries to be the most obvious flaming movie in the world, signposting everything.
It is the most obvious. It's the beat-for-beat carbon copy of Return of the Jedi. It's got so many faults. But I can watch the Revolutions, and it doesn't feel so much of a grind and a disappointment as 2 is. And that's why it just edges it. It's wafer thin between the 2 of them. It's wafer thin between the 2 of them, and I've chose 3 purely on the basis as I am a cunt. No other reason. Just to piss you both off, because neither one of them are great. Neither one of them are shine a light on the first one, and I just wanted to be an awkward bastard motherfucker and say 3 is better than 2.
He's just insane bastard.
I could get 2, and I could cut 2 up and make it 45 minutes shorter, and it'd be an half decent sequel. With 3, I can't get the scissors on 3 to make it an half decent sequel, because
you can get the scissors on it, but you just can't make it.
It just does what it does. It just takes every single plot point, ties it up, and has a happy ending at the end, which makes it slightly better than 2. But I ain't bothered if you go 1, 2, 3. I don't really care.
Stop there. Recording again. Okay, so Munt's dropped the bombshell that it was 132, and I think he's mental. But I did just have a thought while we're on the interval.
You picked the film. You picked 3 as your second film. The film with the major exposition dump in the middle of it, with a character created just to do an exposition dump, with one of the worst scenes ever. That's commitment to a role. Jesus Christ. Go for it, Dave.
I've had a thought, and as much as I was hating on Matrix Revolutions, if you removed Matrix Reloaded entirely, if you just watched The Matrix and then watched Matrix Revolutions, are you going to miss much? Other than the fact that Neo's got hurt and Bane's there, you could catch up with that in a second. Oh yeah, what happened in the last one? They got hurt and he's back there. It wouldn't take a lot to catch up. That's how hit and miss these last 2 are. They really are not great when you think about it. And the come down, it sort of goes, for me.
We'll probably find when they bring out this 4th one that we...
Well, that's what I wanted to talk about next.
We could actually edit the 2nd and 3rd one down into one movie, and then the 4th one could be the 3rd film, and we might have a decent trilogy then. I'm sure Topher Grace will do something like that in his spare time, because he likes.
You bear in mind that 2 and 3 to edit them down. That's a hell of a lot of movie to edit down. I mean,
no, it's not.
It's not exactly short.
You could cut an awful lot out. I mean, even the final Agent Smith fight. I mean, my goodness me, cut it at least by half, and you'll still get the same effect. Nothing happens. He assimilates him, and job's done. Oh God,
cut out
jog on.
CGI stuff.
Yeah, tidy the CGI up. Reshoot the bit with Agent Smith. I don't know. I mean, I was watching Keanu Reeves on the One Show earlier, and it was brought up that he's in Germany at the moment, I think, filming the new Matrix film. And I do hope that the Wachowski sisters, as they are now.
Sister, there's only one doing it.
Oh, sorry, whichever one it is, Lily or Lana. I hope that the first thing that person does is correct the issues from the trilogy. And if I'm not a fan of rebooting, but in this case, it desperately needs it. Reboot it.
No, I think we're going to have another mess. Just purely on the fact what I've read about Hugo Weaving. They wanted Agent Smith in it. He was going to do it. Some things happened. He couldn't do it. So they went, oh, okay, don't worry about it. So if you can have Agent Smith in it, who was the main antagonist for the first 3 movies, right? You don't just go, oh, don't worry about it, 4 months before you start shooting, if your fucking main antagonist isn't coming back. Right?
I don't know. I think it was. I think it was a bit Agent Smith heavy, Mark, literally and metaphorically.
Heavy, but why even bother to ask him to come back? And then when he isn't come back, say don't worry about it, which isn't a great sign. Then you've got no Morpheus either. So what's the point?
Is Lauren Fishburne not doing it?
No, he's not.
That's new apparently as well.
Oh, and what about Carrie-Anne Moss?
She's in it.
Yeah, she's back, even though she died.
Well, they both died. So this is what I'm saying. This has got reboot written all over it.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter because is it the 8th incarnation of Neo? So that's what we're gonna see, isn't it? It's just I don't know. I just think that someone turned around and said, "We got some spare cash. Do you want to make a Matrix movie?" And they just turned around and said, "Well, yeah, I've got to have my flaps looking right, so I'll do it." So.
Oh God.
It's a good job our viewer count's low. Already I upset a few people by whose face did I cover over? Lawrence Fishburne's with Martin's. I could have chosen somebody else, but I chose the only black guy on the photograph. I John Boy argued him that the Chinese did with Force Awakens. Oh,
you've non-black-faced him. You've negative black-faced. How can you possibly do that?
Oh dear. Oh dear. Yeah, I mean, it's just it's one of those trilogies I awaited with bated breath. After that first one, I love the first one, and the second one was just like, come on, something happened. Oh look, there's a very messy CGI fight in the. Oh, a really messy CGI. Oh, a really messy CGI fight in the middle of this. Oh, the twins are here. Is that all they're going to do? And they get killed in a fight, in an explosion. Okay, next. And then the last one is just a mess. So maybe we'll be wrong. Maybe 4 is just going to be infinitely better than those other 2. Martin, what do you think?
I've got to admit,
grab you by the balls.
It's one of those where why the hell are you bothering? Just Jesus Christ. Unless you can go back and actually make it like the more gritty, like the first film again, which seems highly likely, as Mark sort of inferring, really. It seems like they're going to do a reboot of it and just go back and do the first film again, make it a bit gritty, put new actors in it, and then you hope to remake 2 and 3, but a lot better than the ideas that were actually put across there the first time. But to me, it's something it's something unnecessary. If I was going to see anything, I'd have been much more interested, as I say, really, I think, in seeing, Amazon, Netflix, HBO, something like that, do a show and just put the ideas for like follow on the sequels sort of made into a show where the worlds exist in there, and pay out the money and bring back all the actors and do it big on that. I'm not really interested in them as movies anymore. I don't think movies are per se where the market, especially with COVID and everything at the moment, you can't get to the cinema anyway at the moment. It's just, Mandalorian was so good. I'd love to see other people take ideas from their universes and do that.
Okay, here's controversial for you then. I'm watching something at the moment where started with a film years ago. Everybody thought first one was great, and then progressively got worse and silly. Tried a reboot, and then that's about karate. And then they bought a series which is fan-bloody-tastic. Cobra Kai is great.
Don't spoil it for me because I haven't started.
It's fun. It brings the original characters back. It gives you things from a different perspective. And now you sat there thinking, I don't like LaRusso. And then you sort of think, oh, he's all right. It's brilliant. It's a really good show. And there's about enough focus. Bear in mind, I do kickboxing. There's about as much focus on karate as I would want to cope with, i.e. very little.
It doesn't always work, though, when they base TV series on films. You've got Snowpiercer's died. You've got Lethal Weapon died on its arse. You got
that did well for a while, and then the swapping out, changing actors and things like that.
It's all I can see what's going to happen with Matrix 4. I think they're going to treat Matrix 4. They're not saying it at the minute, but I think what they'll do is do what Terminator Dark Fate has tried to do. The new Halloween movies have tried to do. What Superman Returns has tried to do is slot it in straight after the first one and say something happens with time and you can ignore the sequels. And I think that is what we're going to have.
Are you going to love it then? Because we know you love your time movies, Mark.
If they bring fucking time into the Matrix, that's just fucking oh.
The Matrix does Looper. Ah.
Don't wind him up.
I'll tell you what, right? Have you seen Bill and Ted 3 yet?
No.
You know, on my defence has always been Bill and Ted follow their principles that they set up in the beginning of cause and causality. They fucking looped it, didn't they? The stupid bastards.
There's the face of a happy man.
Well, we've got Bill and Ted coming up in a future franchise wars. So
that's really fucking easy.
So on that, thank you to Woody in the studio. I've been Fingermouse. That's Munt, who was insane thinking that it was 1, 3, 2, and clearly it's 1, 2, 3. If you agree with us, comment, put a like, whatever you want to say, and yeah, we will catch you on the next one, where I think we're going to start talking a bit more Star Wars. See you soon.
I'm going to take the blue pill. I'm Mr. Anderson.